This is going to sound like so much hate, and I swear it's not.
Welcome to the Warner Brothas Podcast. My name is Keenan, joined by my brother Kyle, back to the traditional, how it started off, the duo, a couple days before Christmas. Kyle, how are you doing? How are you excited for the Christmas time? Obviously, we got big games coming up. We got big NFL going on, of course. Had an interesting Saturday, I heard, but how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. I've been running around with my head cut off trying to get these last minute Christmas gifts.
Yes.
Had work today too. Yeah, I'm good. It's been a busy
Same.
last few days for sure, but I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. Obviously, I've been in the same, living the whole retail lifestyle, so I've been living very busy myself and obviously finishing up some school stuff before a little bit of a break here. So things have been busy with us, which is a little bit of the reason why we weren't able to get on as our typical Wednesday, Thursday viewing kind of thing. But we are back here, a little bit different schedule this week because of obviously the holidays. The holidays are on Wednesday officially, but Kyle, do you want to start off NFL-wise, talk there, or do you want to start going NBA? Because I know we want to touch on both today. We haven't really been able to touch on much of the NBA, but where would you like to start?
The NBA. Let's kind of wedge it here because this has been on my mind. Obviously, you've seen this. Everyone's seen this. The talk right now is NBA ratings, and
yep.
It's interesting because the league still is very popular. Okay, like I'm sure 2K still sells. I mean, I don't know, but I would assume 2K is in the same ballpark as Madden as far as sales, as far as downloads, online, social media. Like tonight, right? I don't know if you saw this. Andre Drummond gets fake ejected. He gets ejected, then brought back. Then Embiid soon after gets ejected. And the top two trends on Twitter at that point, not 10 minutes after this happened, was Embiid and Drummond, like literally 1 and 2 or 1 and 4 or something like that. So the NBA is still just as popular as any sport on social media. It's just that people aren't sitting down and watching a game like they would for the NFL. And we've kind of broke down all the reasons why that is. And more people are trying to say it's because of the 3-point shot. That's somewhat true. But I don't believe that to be all the way true because guess what? 5 years ago, people were still jacking up threes. 5 years ago, it wasn't as extreme as it is now. But it's not like it just started happening within these last 2 years. I have my own thoughts on it, but I want to know what you think about the ratings and et cetera.
The rating,
and just the overall game itself. How do you feel about that?
There's a lack of care and a lack of accountability for the stars, and I think that's where the ratings comes in. I think that's the main thing. I don't think it's the threes because I think that people regardless would go watch a lot of these games if you could count on like, okay, yeah, LeBron and Steph are playing. Like, Christmas Day you're excited for because you're going to see 10 of probably I'll say 16 best teams up and down. Obviously, I know like Philly's worse than they should be and things like whatever. Just 10 of the 16 best teams in the league, just no argument at all. And you're going to hopefully see all the stars. You're going to see Ant, you're going to see Luka, you're going to see hopefully Embiid, and you're going to see Tatum, you're going to see LeBron, Steph, Jokic, Durant, but like the people who are actually healthy. But like a lot of these games, like marquee television games, like you and I would back in say 2014, obviously because we were in the same house at that point. It'd be like, oh, Thunder Warriors on tonight in February. We're going to sit down and watch it and let's invite some friends over. You're not going to do that now for a couple reasons. Like you're going to do it in the playoffs because like you guaranteed you should get these stars here. But like in the regular season, those regular seasons felt like playoff games. Now they just feel
felt like events for sure.
Yeah, they felt like a true sporting events. Like now they feel just like, oh, okay, I get like you kind of almost got to like talk yourself into them. And I'm going to compare this to USC UConn, Juju versus Page. I knew Juju was playing. I knew Page was playing. I know UConn, Kiki Iriefin. You've got obviously Rihanna Marshall in USC. You've got Ozzie Fudd's coming off of a knee. She kind of played a little bit, but you got Sarah Strong, who is a great freshman. She's literally going to take the torch from Paige when Paige leaves this year. And that's going on the same time as Tennessee and Ohio State in college football. I have those games simultaneously on. I could not wait for that USC UConn game. Lived up. Everything I was hoping for from it. Juju had 25. Paige had 22. Runs back and forth. 72-70 close game. I went into that game expecting something and got what I expected. A lot of the time in the NBA, you go into a game and you don't get what you're expecting. And that's the problem.
That's very well said.
Then that's the problem. That's why I'm excited. I am excited for Christmas Day, LeBron, Steph, because they typically deliver in some way, shape, or form. They'll deliver whatever I'm expecting, a wow play here, an environment and an enthusiastic atmosphere I usually get. So those I'm excited for. Otherwise, it's like you don't know. And that's the problem. You just don't know.
That was very well said of like saying like you go into watching an NBA game that's supposed to be, let's say, marquee star versus marquee star, or even just marquee team versus marquee team.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, man. I would say this is a high number, but it does seem like 90% of the time you go to watch these games and you're 10 minutes in, you're like, all right, I get it. Listen, I would say up until, and I've said this on here, I would say up until 2021 season, maybe even a little after that, maybe going to the 22, but for sure, like all of the 2010s, all of the 2000s, like we're talking my childhood and my teens into my 20s. Mm-hmm. I was an NBA sicko, like every single night in one form or fashion, there's a game going on, whether it's the living room or I'm going to sleep to a game. I am in one way or another watching the NBA, keeping up with the NBA. It's not the case anymore. I'm definitely following the league. I'm definitely up on the league. I'm definitely trying to watch games, but you know, if there's a Thursday night TNT doubleheader, Tuesday night in this case, and you know, oftentimes I don't get to see especially the first game because I'm at work. Usually I'm getting home about 9:30. I'm not immediately thinking, hey, I got to turn on the TNT game. And you know, if there's a star out or if there's two stars out, oftentimes I'm like, cool, whatever. You know, I'm not missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, man, I've so like this league has really turned into stuff we heard like the adults when we were kids. Anytime we would watch a game or when they would comment on the NBA, it's really become that with the 3-point shooting and like especially the. I'm gonna let you go because I really do have a lot of thoughts. I have so many places I can go. No. So
and you're right. It's this like it almost seems like the NBA. Okay, because I'm in the same spot as you. Like you're right. Back when I'm thinking right now, vivid memory. Kevin Durant 54 against the Warriors. Steph had 37. This was in Kevin Durant's MVP season. Fourth quarter, he had 3 straight threes, pretty much from the same exact spot, and it was one of those moments where you're like, this might be the greatest score I've ever seen. Like no one can stop this guy. Like one thing too, 54 points in a game then was like, oh my God, 54? Like you drop 54. Today, 50 is kind of like you see it. Like you're going to see it twice in a month.
It just seems easier.
It just seems easy. Like
I don't know why it is.
A lot of people can go get you 50. Like LaMelo putting up over 30 this season should be insane. Like putting up 30 is like you're putting up 30. Like Shaq, dominant Shaq, MVP, and Finals MVP, All-Star MVP. He put up 29.8 in that season, and people are like, "Oh my, he couldn't stop him. He just kept scoring." And then that was 29.8, and you have LaMelo averaging 30, and it's like, "Oh man, LaMelo's a bucket." That's just
pretty much.
Like it's like, and not in a bad way. Like LaMelo's great. I love LaMelo, one of my favorite players in the league. And I've been. I mean, Kyle, thank you for the Christmas present. Speaking of Christmas time, got me the Big Baller brand sweatshirt about half a decade, or even a little longer ago. It got me a while ago, but it's just I was just thinking back to that Kevin Durant kind of that game. I was playing I had a high school game that day, and I was like wanting to get home because I was like, I know Warriors Thunder are on. Like, I got to watch that game. Like, it was like excited because the Warriors are on the come up, but obviously Kevin Durant was playing at just such an elite level. And I was like, I got to get home and watch that game. And I watched the second half the second I got home, and I was like eager to do that. I'm not rushing. Like, I'm not getting home from work and thinking to myself, I got to go watch this game. I'm kind of like, I'm at home, I'm here, I'm sitting, I'm like looking through the screen, or maybe I'm getting an update. I'm like, oh, Booker has 46 through 3. Let me go maybe check in on this Phoenix game and see what's going on. Like, see, but like, I'm not actually just rushing to it. Like, oh, Phoenix is playing Denver right now. I'm not rushing to, kind of thing.
Few things. All right. I'm going to try to be concise with all this because I have a lot on each of these topics. I really do.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I went to say like how it reminds me of what maybe our parents thought the NBA was back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember being young and I'd be up for the second TNT game or something like that. And my mom or dad would come in, or our mom and dad would come in and they'd be like, hey, Kyle, you got to go to bed. I'd be like, hold on, there's 2 minutes left in the game. And every single time they'd say the same exact thing. And you without me even telling you know what this is. I've heard other parents say this. Like, everyone said the same thing. Oh, 2 minutes left. That's another 15 to 30 minutes. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a complete exaggeration at that time. They'd say the same thing about the NFL. And it's true. The end of the game does take longer. It would maybe take an extra 15 minutes. It may be at the most 15 minutes. Now that's actually true. It really is 20, possibly, honestly, 30 minutes. I think it was Celtics Bucks a few weeks ago where it was like the last 34 seconds took 25 minutes of real time or something like that. Partly because of replay review, partly because of fouls down the stretch. Like, these games are nauseating to watch, especially down the stretch. It's overcoached. Keenan, this reminds me, it very much reminds me of when I started losing interest in the MLB. It just became something I didn't recognize. And then when I would come back and try to give it chances, maybe even a couple years later, all the players looked the same to me. All the managers were trying to do the same thing. Everybody was like over managing in the MLB. And then just these players, these peripheral role players that weren't the stars, they all just looked the same to me. Like, same style, like maybe just like tall, like big chested, like bearded dudes. Like, I'm like, these guys are all the same. Now, I mean, a lot of these role players got the same look, got the same swag.
6'8" to 6'10", skinny, lanky, have a little bit of handle, shoot threes.
They all
a lot of these role players.
And it's overcoached. These guys are way overcoaching. Like we just said, the end of the game. A lot of that's because of overcoaching. Like, you can't tell me these guys are fucking all professionals. You can't tell me 6 seconds left in the game. Yeah, you got a timeout left. You don't need to use that timeout. If you got someone like Chris Paul or LeBron James or whoever, Kevin Durant, any of these guys on the floor, trust me, they don't need that timeout. They're going to get themselves a good shot, right? So,
and it's better too because like you get to a lot of the times because you're overcoaching. I'm not, and that's not even overcoaching in this sense. Like, you're down 2 and the other team has the ball. They're gonna have their offensive 5 in. So maybe you get a matchup against a Peyton Pritchard per se, who he works on defense. Don't get me wrong. About like Peyton Pritchard will work on defense. He's not a lazy defender by means, but he's a guy you could exploit. And maybe they could take out a Peyton Pritchard for, Drew Holiday, just to give a switch. Even though Drew Holiday will probably be on the closing 5 anyway on the offensive side. But like, you might get that switch. Without the timeout, you don't have it. So you're like, okay, yeah, we can maybe trust Anthony Edwards to make a good decision in 7 seconds with the ball. Don't need to call a timeout. He can figure it out. And why are we paying him this kind of money if he can't figure out 7 seconds to get himself a decent look? Like, obviously, but obviously if you get into a pickle and you have that timeout with like maybe a trap with 3 seconds and then take the timeout, but like, it's just let your players play. And that's something I've loved Steve Kerr for. He's always let Steph just like, okay, go. Like, you guys are really good at basketball. You guys can figure it out. Go.
Yeah, man, it's nauseating. I just mentioned the overcoaching. College basketball is the land of overcoaching, and even the end of their games, by and large, run more smoothly than the NBA. The NBA is the worst it's ever been as far as the last 2 minutes, last 3 minutes of the game.
They need to adopt that WNBA reset timeout.
The advance. That would be perfect. Just
they need to adopt
one of
that.
those timeouts. If you got 3 timeouts left and one of them can be that alone would speed up the game. I don't know why they're not taking from FIBA. FIBA's replay review takes 2 seconds. Us, the fans at home, the fans in the arena, the announcers, everyone can see these calls because by and large, most of the time, they're pretty simple calls that you can see within the first 10, 15 seconds of the replay. We're like, oh, yeah, but went off this guy. Yeah, that was a travel. Yes or no, that was not a foul. And these refs are just taking too long. And then these refs on top of that are the worst I've ever seen in the NBA. The worst. You saw last night. It was either last night or the night before. Podziemski for the Warriors. He was telling the ref there was a spillage on the floor and they teed him up. Same game that was against the Timberwolves, and then rips into the refs after the game. It's
just everyone has so much ego. It's just like the refs feel like they're.
I feel like these refs don't have enough ego. I feel like these refs don't have enough ego. Joey Crawford was someone who everyone said had an ego, but guess what? You knew that game was at least going to be officiated and not getting out of hand. These refs have no control over the game. These are like JV ass refs out there to me.
Fair both ways, and I mean they have ego as in like they. You're right in both ways. Honestly, they're just inconsistent, and it's like you get to a point where it's like we don't want the refs to be any part of the game. I don't want the conversation to be about like I'm not going there. Shout out to Joey Crawford, very good ref. I'm not going there to talk Joey Crawford. Like that's not what I'm going there for. Like if I'm watching 2010, I'm watching Hornets Lakers. I'm there to talk rest in peace Kobe and Chris Paul. That's why I want to watch that game. Those players, Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum, whoever, like David West, sure, whatever. But I want to talk about the players. I don't care to talk about whatever refs or go through like. Or the 2-minute report that the NBA still thinks it's a cool thing to do. Like, I don't. Okay, cool. So 48 hours later, you realize that you made the wrong call. Are you going back and replaying the game? No? Okay, then what does it matter? Because I don't care. We know you made the wrong call. We saw it in real time. Or we saw it on the replay. Like, there's no replay that should take more than a minute and a half at max. And the only other time it's a minute and a half is if you're like, okay, so it's off this person. All right, how much time was left there? How much is on the shot clock? Okay. They don't need a timeout. Fine, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's no need for these replays to take all that long. Like, if whatever the call was on the court, you stick with that if it's very close, or otherwise, it's clearly the opposite. You see it from 3 different angles, see it slow-mo. Like, obviously, the camera work at these games is phenomenal. Camera crew's doing a great job. You get so many different angles on everything, and you get to see everything. You've got the shot clock, you've got the baseline, you've got the widescreen, you've got everything. Like, you've got every camera angle, so, like, it shouldn't take all that long. And that's with the NFL, too, because sometimes the NFL takes way too long with the reviews, and it's like, God, it really is not that.
Normally when it is, normally they have reason to. They have reason to. And at least them, if it does take long, it's like, okay, we're used to that. It happens sometimes. The NBA, it's every single night this happens on run-of-the-mill stuff, man. Like, I've seen it on just like 2 people going out of bounds in the third. It doesn't even have to be at the end of the game. It could be second or third quarter. They're reviewing 2 people. Looks like one tipped it out. Maybe it was the other guy. And we can see with the first 2 replays who it went off. And they're standing there for a full 2 minutes. It's ridiculous. I mean, everyone would think like, oh, technology makes things better. I promise you it's part of the reason why the NBA product is worse. I'm not going to say far worse because the playoffs are great, but it's worse. And look.
And the last thing is this also has to do with the players too. Like, sure. And it's clearly I think there's everybody has a part in it. And I think Adam Silver has a part in this. The way obviously he's empowered the players. Obviously David Stern has been is a different kind of guy. And there are things that Adam Silver has done better than David Stern. There's things that Adam Silver has done worse than David Stern, of course. But it's what
do you think he's done better?
I'll get to that in just a second. I just want to remember what I was going to say first.
Sure.
Let me make sure I didn't forget what I was just going to say thinking about that.
You said part of this is on the players.
No, part of this is on the players. Yes. Okay. There's no reason why we need to be incentivized to play an all-star game. Like
or a regular season game.
A regular season game. Like, cool. Like, I get being innovative, adding an in-season tournament, adding a couple tournaments to give a little bit more incentive there. But like at the same time, like I don't understand why we need to be in a situation where like the winning team gets $500,000 per play. Like, what does it matter? Just go out there and put on.
Your average fan's not going to give a fuck about that, especially when you're whoever your eighth man. If your eighth man's competent, like if you got an actual eighth man who can play, chances are he's making more money than like a starting strong safety that actually makes an impact in the NFL. You know what I mean? It's becoming increasingly harder for probably the average adult NBA fan to relate to when you got these guys not willing to play.
And if you can't relate, then it's hard to like. This just feels like a billionaire game. Like the NFL feels, the NFL makes more money, and they feel like a more like player, like a regular everyday guy game because you do get your random rookie running back on a rookie deal making $800,000, which obviously, don't get me wrong, $800,000 is a lot of money. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's not a lot of money, but it's still not like some random guy who's like a ninth man getting like Dante DiVincenzo. Like he's earned his contract, don't get me wrong, but when he was signed, when role player DiVincenzo was signed like his 3-year, $50+ million deal, I was like, oh, that's Saquon Barkley money.
Yeah.
That's guy who could possibly win the MVP this year because of how great of a running back he's been in the league. Saquon Barkley money. Oh, okay. Dante Divan. All right. For the 7th best player on whatever roster he's on, probably 5th to 7th best player for whatever roster he's on. All right. And so it's just like, okay, I can't really be like, oh man, you need to be incentivized. Go for a weekend. I understand. Go put on a show. Like go put on a show in the dunk contest for your fans, the people who help pay your checks. Because if we're not going to the game and watching the game, what does it matter? Go put on a show. No one's asking you to go try to break your back, but at the same time, just go put out some just fancy dribble moves, that things that we civilians can't do on a basketball floor. Throw some lobs, shoot some shots, and then you know what? Maybe have your pride kick in and say, hey, I don't really feel like losing. I don't care if it's in an all-star game. I watched Kobe do it. I watched Mike do it. It'd be one thing, too, if we didn't watch other all-time greats, even some of the which who are playing today. I've watched LeBron do it. Literally watched LeBron James go. Watch Anthony Davis play. Like Kevin Durant. Like these guys who are still playing today, I've watched them play serious all-star games. Like they shouldn't need to be incentive. I'm going on.
I had a highlight pop up of the 2001 All-Star game, which I see these clips all the time, especially when they pop up like around All-Star time. So like they always come up like every year, but I just happened to catch it on my timeline. And I only watched the first 3 clips because I'm like, all right, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. I only watched the first 3 clips, Keenan, but all 3 either involved Tim Duncan or Alonzo Mourning or one of the big dudes trying to block a shot, trying to block a dunk in an all-star game. And I immediately got nostalgic and I was like, I can't watch anymore because it's just going to make me upset because I know it went downhill even since then. Like even in the 2010s, maybe it was a little less serious in the 2000s, but they were still playing pretty hard. I mean, even early 2010s, we had that moment where LeBron passed it up to Melo or LeBron passed up to Dwayne Wade on that shot. That was a story. Kobe and everyone was talking shit to him. Like, we will never have a moment like that in the NBA All-Star game again.
We were thoroughly upset. We're like, LeBron, go at Kobe. Go. Wade's looking at him. Melo's looking at him.
I remember his own
sitting there like,
Wade
okay,
and Melo
let's
and Kobe all got on him. I will never forget that. That was a great All-Star game.
They're legitimately upset because it's like, we understand this game is supposed to mean a little something. Okay, so these are the 12 best from this side. These are the 12 best from this side. Who's really the best? And like, obviously who really is the best? MVPs, championships, all first team All NBAs, playoff runs. Obviously that really shows who's the best. But like in like a small little, who's the best today? Like, I'm better than you. Like, Kobe would just like, hey, I'm Kobe. I'm better than you, Kobe. Like, yeah, okay, sure.
It used to be branded as the world's best pickup game is what the All-Star game used to be branded as.
That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. It's literally just how you start a pickup, like your whole pickup run. The first game of pickup is like, okay, you kind of feel at your team, you're getting your legs stretched out, but like you're still playing serious, but you're not diving into it instantaneously. Some people are, and when you do that, that's when you know, okay, we're having a real serious run today, because like someone's instantly diving into just like full-fledged action. But it's like, by the third game, we're already ready to just like, it's okay, like we're playing basketball today. We should be doing that I don't understand how NBA players who get paid for a living to do this just can't seem to muster that. I don't know.
Yes. Two responses to that I'm going to go in depth on. But before that, now I got to remember. Now I might have forgot. Holy shit. Hold on. Let me think. What do we got here? So, all right. The easy fix to all this, and we've said this a million times, but it's so fucking true. And if they did this tomorrow, they did it today, it literally would make all the difference. Like ratings would go up, and that's cut the season at least, like cut it 16 games. 66 games is perfect. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have enough. There's not enough games to where you can say like, oh, like I'm going to sit this one out, right? If Embiid sits, I don't mean to use him as an example, but he said he's going to no longer play back-to-backs, but he's got real injury concerns, so I won't go too hard on him. But man, like, didn't Zion come back the other night? Is this true?
I think so, yeah.
This is bad. This is bad that I don't even know that. But I feel like I got a notification. Reason why I bring that up, Keenan. Got a notification about that he was coming back. Maybe
he's not back yet. He's only played 6 games this year.
Okay. All right. So never mind. That's besides the point. Ruins that. But I was going to say I looked up the Pelicans roster yesterday when they were playing the Nuggets, and he didn't play. And I'm kind of thinking, all right, if he just came back, why is he sitting? But if that's not the case, then my fault. But I have seen games where I go to watch and maybe an Anthony Edwards isn't playing that night. Or we talk about people being the same, Keenan. Anthony Edwards is shooting like 12 threes a game this year. He's getting Kobe comparisons. He's getting Jordan comparisons. They go to the rim. Dwayne Wade comparisons. They all go to the rim.
Crazy
Anthony
stat
Edwards.
for you before you go on.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy quick stat. Steph Curry, 2014-2015, his first MVP season. What do you think of? Okay, great point guard, shoots a lot of threes, kind of started to revolutionize the game. Wemby's taking more threes at a higher clip than Steph did that year.
More attempts? What was Steph's attempts in 2015?
Let me look. Like the percentage, the percentage of shots that Wemby takes is like 50% threes, and for Steph it was like 48.7. So like Wemby takes a higher percentage of threes, like for shots he takes than Steph does.
My guess
is kind of insane.
My guess is Wemby takes probably 7 or 8 per game.
Yep. Like today he was 6 of 13. On the season right now, Wemby is taking 9 threes a game.
Wow, that's a lot.
He is taking 9 threes a game, and if you give me just 3 seconds, Steph in his first MVP season was taking 8.1 threes. So he's taking 1 more 3 a game than MVP and the first initial 67 and 15 Warriors MVP Steph.
That's incredibly low for Steph. I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, the next year jumped up to 11, and then he's been over 11 every single year other than 1. Or over 10, actually, I should say, other than 1. But like that next year is really where it made the jump. But just to think, like even first MVP Steph, Wemby's taking more threes a game than him.
That's wild. And there's no reason for him to, by the way. He's still incredible.
He can shoot great. Don't get me wrong. Like when he shoots over 30%, the Spurs are 11-3 from 3. So like when he shoots threes,
let's get down to like 5 or 6 though. You know, I guarantee you, like Towns. Mm-hmm. Towns is probably the best big man shooter. I guarantee you, Towns ain't attempting 9. He's probably somewhere like in the 6 range.
Yeah, no, where he should be.
Not to get too ADHD on everybody, but you want to talk about a crazy stat. I don't even know how this is possible, but Wemby, just right now, not even halfway through his second year, he has more blocks than 91% of every player that's ever played. So he's in the 9th percentile
top 10%
of blocks. 9%. How is that even possible? And you're not even like that. That stat insane. Like broke my mind, honestly.
No,
But
he is
seriously,
insane. And we went from 10 blocks last game to 8. He had 7 blocks in 12 minutes today. Like, it's just he is insane.
he's an
But
alien.
then I thought that
I'll say this, Keenan, whenever he does hit his stride, whenever he becomes the MVP of the league, everything he's supposed to be, the league should take back off. It should coincide with him. He's the one. We've never seen anything like him. And his game matches up with that, with his size, with his just unreal body. Like the dude looks fake. He don't even look real. Right. And his game matches that. Like it literally looks like he's playing on a Nerf hoop. We just talked about the blocks, and he can shoot, and he can handle. Kids are going to adapt to that. Your casual fans are certainly going to watch that. And if he wins on top of that, let's say he goes on a real championship run, maybe repeats, maybe has a couple MVPs, that should get some interest in the league. But man, again, cut the games to 66. That'll do wonders. They'll never do it. Before I get to my points again, coming off this in-season tournament, Keenan, how did you feel about that? What was your feelings about watching it? I thought it was great. But then it's like, okay, I felt this way last year. We go from these fun, intense postseason-like games back to regular NBA basketball right after that.
It's just a lull now. It gives like a spike. It's like, oh, I should tune into this, and then you just go back to regular scheduled. I'm watching college football. I'm watching the NFL. That's kind of what it does. Is you're like, oh, okay, let me watch these games because it seems like these games are they matter to the players. It's crazy when things matter to the players and they act like it matters to them, that the people that are watching it matters to. It's a crazy thing. When you act like you don't care, we're probably going to act like we don't care. It's not difficult. It's pretty simple. If you don't care about it, then why should I care about the product? But when you do care about it and you act like you care, like people have made this in-season tournament, like we want to win this. We want to play well. And it's like, okay, I'm going to care. I'm going to watch these games with intrigue because you guys are going to be playing your best basketball, which is obviously what we do in the playoffs. When you're playing your best basketball, you guys all care. You want to win a championship. It's like, oh, cool. Like, I mean, I know you, Kyle. You're a basketball fan. Over the summer, you were tuned into every USA game you possibly could because it looked like the players cared. So you wanted to watch good players play basketball where they care, which is why I watched a lot of the WNBA. Every game, it looked like those women cared. Looked like every game, like when I'm watching college, it looked like they cared. Sorry.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you, the WNBA.
Like that's all that matters.
The WNBA is slightly better, that WNBA is a more relatable product right now. I'm not going to go all the way in and say it's a better product than the NBA, but it damn near is. Once they really get their games like on like a TNT Thursday like that, and their games aren't on Ion or whatever the fuck it's called. Once they're more mainstream, man, like it's a better product. You don't got this replay. You don't, like we've mentioned, you got the advanced rule. Like it's more relatable basketball. The NBA, man, they just can't seem to get it right as far as the player movement was too insane as far as stars go. Then they go way too overbearing with this current CBA, and we're never going to see stars get traded. On top of all the issues we brought up with people not playing, with the increase of threes. I thought it was super interesting, Keenan. I don't know if you saw this last week in the middle of all this, like the peak of all this hoopla about the ratings and da-da-da. LeBron goes out of his way, it's not like LeBron's quiet. I'm not saying that, but LeBron went out of his way to say, when they asked him about the All-Star game, he goes, before we figure out the All-Star game, there's too many fucking threes being shot in our league right now. I'm wondering, why did LeBron say that? I feel like LeBron could have said that at any point over the last 5 years. Why did he come out and say that now? I thought that should have been way bigger news than what it was, because it kind of just came and went. That I could not believe LeBron went out of his way to say that, because he didn't have to say that at all. They asked him about the All-Star game, and he went out of his way to say, listen, there's too many fucking threes in our game right now. Let's figure that out first. I'm not saying I want to watch threes, but I also don't want to see a cap on threes either. But super intriguing, interesting why LeBron would say that. LeBron doesn't just throw his words around lightly like that.
No, LeBron doesn't just speak for no reason, and he's saying it for he says things for good reason. Where we're top heavy and then they change the roster. Like he just like when LeBron speaks, he says something because he knows obviously he's LeBron James, and so he knows that his words are going to be definitely listened to. And this was one of the situations where his words weren't listened to at nearly the like they weren't treated with the kind of almost demand that LeBron James words typically are treated with. Like that's typically stories galore, like consistently. Like LeBron said this, LeBron said this, LeBron said. But like you're right, that kind of came and went, and that's not typically what you'll see from a LeBron James kind of comment, which is crazy to think too. But yeah, and this is actually not where I thought we were gonna go with this with this talk with the NBA.
I still got more. But I still got more in the clip.
I'm saying we can still good. I'm just like this was not where I thought we were going with it, but I'm happy because you're right. When you're asking for less of a product, that's kind of a problem. Like we're asking more WNBA games or more, and I'm comparing it because that's the basketball, regardless of how people feel. Some people are like, well, they're not as athletic, they're not as whatever, but like they're still doing things on the court that are insane. Like regardless of anything, they're still doing things like, oh, okay, that's a nasty play. Like that's a great shot. That's great. That's great basketball to watch. It's fluid basketball. And I actually have a question for you that Nick Wright had said, and it actually kind of brought up a thought for me. Is there a bigger star in all of basketball under the age of 30 bigger than Caitlin Clark?
Caitlin Clark. I've heard this.
In the NBA?
I've heard this brought up. Technically, no. But
isn't that kind of crazy to think?
But then here's the thing, though. I have my test for this is always Instagram followers, and she has less than I thought. I think she was like in the 3 or 4 million range. You can make an argument it's Wemby, right? But he's definitely not like a Wemby game versus the Lakers, let's say. That's not as big of a deal as Caitlin Clark against whoever on ESPN, right?
Like think next year, right? Like it's for somehow it managed to be a regular season game or something, and it was Caitlin versus Paige. Or it was Wemby versus Luka. What game's getting more views? I think it's gonna be the Caitlin and Paige.
It is,
and that's insane.
And Keenan, that's where I was going with this.
Even Juju and Paige might get more than Wemby, like because like if you think about, because that actually could be a thing. Imagine like in late March, it's like Juju and Paige like part 2, and it's say Wemby and Luka and they're competing for the 7th seed, or the 6th seed, so they don't have to play in the play-in. So a game that matters. I genuinely think Paige and Juju could probably generate more eyes than Wemby and Luka, and that's insane to me.
You're probably right. And I was gonna say earlier, it's kind of a moot point because once the postseason comes around, it does seem like the NBA kind of does take center stage, and like that becomes the main topic. Especially when you got the Knicks there, you'll have the Celtics there, you'll have all the major players.
Probably the Warriors, Lakers. Obviously, Jokic has made the Nuggets a household name and kind of things like that.
You mentioned Adam Silver. One thing I think he has done wrong is that David Stern did right. David Stern was always building up the next guy. I don't think Adam Silver's done a great job about that. I think, like, for instance, you said Lakers Warriors right on Christmas. That's great. Like, that's actually great. That's great to see LeBron versus Steph. My thing is we still see that as the opening night matchup. We still see that as your Saturday night matchup, right? Like they will go out of their way to put Lakers or Warriors everywhere rather than put on
OKC's not playing on Christmas Day.
Thunder, right? Yeah, exactly. The Thunder should have more games, right? Luka gets his.
I don't hate the matchups, but you should be pushing Shea, Wemby,
Christmas is fine.
Jokic.
I'm fine with that all being on Christmas. It's more so like these Tuesday night games. It still seems to be like Philly and Boston. They should be okay. Like they're younger, but I feel like they still cling to LeBron and Steph a little too much. little too much. Just as their teams are on the downside. If they were still contenders, fine.
Yeah,
But
no,
that's where they should be
have
putting maybe Wemby, maybe like OKC, the T Wolves more.
that.
That
That's
sort
what
of
Adam
thing.
Silver
The
was
Magic.
like.
The Magic.
Adam Silver was
Magic should be on
smiling
TV
ear
more.
to ear. Yes, I agree 100%. Paulo is a problem. I mean, they're injured right now, which sucks because Paulo and Franz are both out, but they're a problem. But Adam Silver was smiling ear to ear when he woke up, when he, like, in early November, when the Lakers and Warriors were both like the 2 and 3. He was like, "We got it. This is our year, boys. We get a Western Conference Finals matchup of Steph, Braun." And listen, I'm one of the fans that kind of want it. Like, after watching the Olympics, I want LeBron and Steph in one more playoff run where they're trying to make moves.
Sure.
Like, that's
Sure.
what I want.
We're at least going to have Steph here for a few more years. Like, LeBron's going to be gone by the time 2030 rolls around. It could be this year. It could be in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he makes it.
He's not making it out of the decade. No.
He's not making it out of, let's say, Trump's presidential term. Right?
No.
He'll be gone before Trump's gone as far as president goes. So
I hope.
Right. LeBron's here 4 years later. What did he be? He'd be 44. Yeah, LeBron.
Yeah, no, he'd be playing into Brady years, like, and like not Brady years as in like how many years in the league. I mean Brady years as in legitimately the age of Brady when he retired. And Brady obviously had to go to college for. Brady went to college for 4 years. Like it was
about this time. It was about this time in Kobe's last season where he said, like, yeah, this is going to be it. It was around December. I remember that much. So it doesn't seem like this year is LeBron's last year, though I could see it. LeBron would definitely want a farewell tour, as he more than deserves one. So if
any player ever, honestly, like, he deserves his farewell tour.
Yeah. Anybody who's done this much for the game. Mike got one his last year with the Wizards. Which he didn't with the Bulls, really. Like, didn't happen because, he left us up in the air. But Kobe got one. If LeBron doesn't retire next year, if LeBron stays around next year, it's got to be the year after, I would think. And when that happens, when he's out of the league, it's going to be a huge drop off. The thing that's going to save them, and I truly believe this is going to happen, it's the worst kept secret that LeBron will be buying into the Las Vegas team whenever that does happen. So if that's true, he's still going to be like the talk of the league especially if he's a majority owner. He will be still an everyday topic. First off, game, before I get to my last point, I know I've brought up a lot of this here and there. Like, throughout the years, we will kind of bounce back to this conversation we're having now. This might be the most in-depth we've gone with it. And we've each said, like, cut the season, start the season in November or December, maybe even go into the summer. All stuff that's never going to happen that I truly believe can, like, cut 16 games. There's ways to make that money back. Money's the reason why they'd never do it. But but what we've lost and all that, and by the way, Keenan, I do want to, like I just said, cut the games. The only other way I really see them getting these games eventized again, and we've said it, and we had a segment about it a few weeks back when I visited to Tennessee. We now know, as you mentioned, with this All-Star game, it's different than we thought. It's still going to be an All-Star game, but it's going to be the way of the Rising Stars Challenge the last couple of years, a little mini tournament. The tournament idea we had set up, we got to go more in depth with that. We got to map it out exactly how it would happen. I want to come up with a true idea because I think that's truly the way. Tournament in December, tournament in February, tournament in April, the real tournament in April. I think you would truly keep viewership, and I truly think there's a way to do that. And I think we got to map it out and really get into it and paint a picture for everybody of how that would look. Going off that, though, I say eventized. These regular season games don't seem like events the way, as you mentioned, the WNBA does. Obviously, every NFL game feels like an event. You're going to get that with 16, 17 games, playoffs. They got that. International soccer, EPL. Their main league, I believe, is 38 games. So that's pretty eventized too. They kind of have a similar NFL schedule where they play Saturday, Sunday. 40 games isn't a lot. Obviously, college sports across the board is eventized. NBA, MLB, when you got that many games, it's not going to do it. Now, I do think NBC, they will bring that back next year and going forward. They do production like no other. They were the best for the NBA. Should have never left. Should have never broke their contract. Whatever happened there. Obviously, we see it with the NFL, with Sunday Night Football, with college sports. I do think they're going to bring an element of that back. That being said, Keenan, ESPN has done irreversible damage to the way fans talk about basketball. And I know this because, I mean, I saw the most prime example of it within I think a 1 day span, honestly, 2 day span. A couple weeks back, Jokic had that incredible game against Washington, right? What do you have? He had 54, 52, triple-double?
55, I think it was 55, 13, and like 9. Because like there was like he had that, and then he had 46 the next night. Because he put like a 108 or 109 points in like 2 straight games. He was insane.
This is a topic I've brought up before, but it has to be said, Keenan. I go
56,
to Twitter.
16, and 8. And then he backed that up with 48, 14, and 8.
Incredible. And on top of this, he wasn't missing many shots. Like, it was an efficient 50, right? 50 plus. Crazy game, blah, blah, blah. I go to Twitter because I see this. Like, I see it going on. I'm at work. I go to Twitter just to check it out. Go to the Jokic trending topic. And, you know, it's got a stat line there, blah, blah, blah. Then you go to the comments. You go to the replies. Everybody's talking about, oh, he ain't the real MVP. If he was the real MVP, they would have won the game. It's like a 2-point loss. Mind you, like, this was also a game where I think the Nuggets scored 5 threes total and Jokic had 3 of them. Like, it was clearly one of those games. And by the way, anyone who knows ball, that's literally all you could do in the game. If you got 55, 14, and 8, there's not much more you could do in that game. So obviously these are fans who just clearly just want to talk shit. But it's a lot. It was the majority of the comments, Keenan, that I'm reading was, how's this guy the real MVP? Oh, if you were a real player, you'd lose. Before you go on, Keenan.
Kyle, I bet I'm looking right now.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of money. Whoever was saying that couldn't have named 4 other players that got 10 plus minutes in that game.
You're right. Keen, you're 100% right. But
because it was Michael Porter Jr., sure, Christian Braun, sure, Russell Westbrook, sure. They couldn't have given me a 4th.
Oh, absolutely.
Peyton Watson, Julian Strother, Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson, which could be Tyson Hunter. Like, literally, I mean, like, that's a first name. DeAndre Jordan got 9 minutes.
Yeah, yes.
This isn't Lob City.
Exactly.
Like, no one would have been able to mention
DeAndre Jordan should be out the league. DeAndre Jordan should be out the league, and he's often getting backup minutes way too many times.
Yeah, like, no one in that game could have told me anything. And understand, like, I get it. The Wizards aren't a great team, but what the Wizards do have are people who can score. They have scores. Like, and also everyone on that team's an NBA player.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they can get hot for a night.
Exactly. This exact situation, Keenan, where whether it's the best player in the league, whether it's a superstar, it's not the first time someone's had an incredible game and they lost to a lesser team. Happens probably every season, honestly. My point being, though, NBA fans, that was the majority of the discourse I saw, right? And then including Keenan, the next day, you're right. He had the very next day, he had a just as insane game, or almost as insane of a game. And it was kind of crickets. No one could hate because they actually won that game, right? So it was crickets. But my point is, that Sunday, Keenan, that was the same Sunday Josh Allen had his game against the Rams, where the Bills also lost. And Josh Allen had, 6 total touchdowns?
3 rushing, 3 passing, first time since Otto Graham in 54.
So he literally had the same type of game as Jokic, different sport. And Keenan, the reception to it was completely different. The way most people the way most people consume sports, Keenan. The way people talk about the NBA now in such a negative tone. And I know we're kind of doing that. We're critiquing the game right now, but I'm saying there's fans who literally are trying to have their first take moment after every single important thing that happens in the league. Could be like if the Knicks went on a 10-game win streak, people are going to hate like it's the biggest thing, which is a part of sports, but that seems to be the main discourse in the league, where you're not getting that in the NFL. You're not getting that, I'm assuming, in the MLB because it's not mainstream. You're not getting that in prize fighting as far as boxing and UFC. It really only seems to be the NBA. And I've seen lunatic shit. Don't get me wrong. There's times I don't watch soccer, but there's times I'll click on an EPL Saturday or Sunday and I'll click, tap whatever on these players that I know have to do with the EPL. And these fans are fucking lunatics when it comes to European soccer fans. Like they're another level from even NFL fans. But even still, man, like all the discourse around these popular sports, the NBA is by far the most negative I've seen. And not even just negative, like I said, over the top ESPN first take type of negative. Unreal type of negative. It's I've never seen anything like it, and it's only gotten worse since stuff like KD to the Warriors. And to me, Keenan, that's really where all this started. I've mentioned that the league's naturally kind of going to decline from there. But also, Keenan, it really does seem different from the bubble because 2020 seemed like a pretty normal season all the way up until the bubble and COVID happened. And the league seemed really out of whack since then. We were already having load management problems. Yeah. The player movement shit was at its peak. Yeah. Durant at that time goes to the Nets, torn Achilles, but he's on the Nets, right? His third team. So that was still all going on, but the league still seemed in a good place. But man, 2020 on, bubble on, it seemed different for whatever reason. So
it's
I don't know where we go. It seems like you almost have to wait for the Wemby breakout.
Yeah, everybody wants to have, like, you're right. They want to have, obviously, and I mean, we are not that narrative. I mean, we're not the same, but we could be perceived the same because we're two brothers here who are doing a podcast who are obviously talking sports and having our opinions on everything. And everyone's allowed to have their opinions. But everybody, instead of just having an authentic opinion, they're looking for the bold take that, like, they half even believe. But they're just saying it to, like, kind of just like to kind of give a bold take, like, man, if Jokic was really a top 10 player of all time, he would have beat the Wizards. How could he not beat the Wizards? It's like okay, these are NBA players. It's 82 games. Do you expect him to go 82-0? Have we never seen a team of a lesser stature or a higher stature lose to a team of a lesser stature? Like, it's never happened before. Mike never lost a game he shouldn't have lost. Like, we're going to try to make that seem like it is. Mike wasn't 76-6 every year and only losing games to Barkley, Hakeem, Sean Kemp, and Clyde. It wasn't like, obviously, like, these teams were still losing to, like, actual to teams. Like, it happens.
And off that,
they're NBA players.
Off that, that's one thing the NBA used to do a great job of on All-Star Weekend that they no longer do. They used to celebrate the legends of the past. And that's something that the NFL and MLB still do a great job of. And
absolutely.
You know, I watch the UFC. I'm big on that. They're always bigging up the legends from when it was a completely, like, if you watch a UFC match, Keenan, not even from like the 90s and 2000s, forget about it. It's the same thing as like 60s NBA, right? But even like mid 2000s or late 2000s, 2009, 2010, it's a much different sport from even now. That's a short time ago. Right. And they still like big up the legends of the past. It's not the discourse of the NBA, what you get when you're talking about legendary players of the past. But the NBA used to do a great job, especially again on All-Star Weekend, of bigging these guys up. And it doesn't seem
you'd have them as your dunk contest guys. You would see them on the weekends. You'd be getting interviews with a bunch of guys. You would just be in any way, shape, or form that they could be bringing up these guys, they would bring them up. And like the guys that you should, like, I mean, they'll pave the way. Like, yeah, if Shaq's sideline in 06 watching a dunk contest, yeah, let me know Shaq's there. And if you guys are going to try, like, obviously Kenny and I were them talking, bring Shaq in to have him maybe say a couple words. Cool. Like, we're good with that kind of stuff. Like, obviously these people matter. And you're right.
Instead, they want to have completely colored courts that look fucking insane.
They want to do that, or they want to have they have just like a focus on Kevin Hart. They're just like they got a
little better off the Kevin Hart thing, but it was.
No, but he was
sick.
Like,
it was pretty sick at one point.
he was the all-star guy. Like, he was just like the all-star. Like, he would sit in the booth, or he would sit like with the panel and to people talking about the all-star game and everything. He would be obviously a part of it. Obviously, he's Friday and Saturday. Like, he's sometimes was one of the biggest celebrities of all NBA All-Star Weekend. And it's
he unfortunately
NBA
had a
All-Star
run.
Weekend.
He unfortunately had more of a run than he should have with NBA All-Star Weekend, which I
No,
will
like,
say that's one thing they did even in Stern's era. They would pick up the celebrities too, but they made it all like come together, whereas now it just feels jumbled. All the players, again, I'm not trying to sound like boomer ass Kyle here, but the players are
whatever.
just by and large too cool for school. They've been that way on All-Star Weekend and the dunk contest, but now when that permeates into your regular All-Star games, it's not good. It's not good, but that's not fair to teams like the Magic, like the Thunder, like the Celtics, who do take the regular season seriously. I throw the Knicks in
Spurs are
there
playing
too.
hard. I know that
Spurs,
because I
Knicks.
watch them quite often. So like
There's
there's a lot of
a
teams that
lot
are
of good.
playing.
There's a lot of
Yes,
There's a lot of good in the league. We're not saying there's not. It's just the stuff we grew up with, where you could just on a Wednesday go watch, I don't know, Hawks versus Knicks, and you get a good game. I remember
you'd
like this
watch
clip.
Nets and Sixers, and you could watch a Vince Carter versus AI game. You're like, oh, I know we're getting something good here.
For sure. For sure. I got a clip came up about Paul Pierce talking about Nate Robinson when he tried jumping on him after the game winner versus the Knicks. And he like fell. You remember that?
Yeah,
And I just remember that game. That game was now probably like 14 years ago, which is insane. But I remember that was a Friday night game. And I remember like days after that, like talking with 3 or 4 people, like, yo, did you watch Celtics Knicks the other night? That was such a good game. Like, that does not happen in my life anymore. As far as like random people who I know don't watch the sport, that game happened to catch their eye and they watch it to the end. Or someone who does watch the sport, even. All my friends who did once upon a time watch the NBA do not watch it in the same fashion they did 10 years ago. Almost to a man. Like, I can't even. Keenan, you might watch the league the most out of everybody who I would consider like NBA junkies in my circle. Like, yeah, I don't think any one of us watches it nearly, which is of course the case. You get older, da da da. But even as
no,
much as like, I think
but
everybody
it's
like
different. But it's
right.
different though,
I
because like
think
here's the thing: I still watch. I'm not like I'm not watching sports daily.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's the thing. It's just like the NBA's the
yeah.
amount I'm watching the NBA is less. Like that's it. Like I'm still college is on Saturday. I'm watching on Saturday. Football's on Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday. Like I'm watching all of the football days on whatever day it is. It's going to be on Wednesday on Christmas Day. I'm going to be highly tuned into it. Like I
I will
like
say
all
this.
like sport like WNBA was on Tuesdays, Mondays, Thursdays. I was watching all days. It didn't matter what day it was. I was still watching. Like so it had nothing to do with like my sports intake's gone down. But I do get what you're saying. Like obviously, like your friends who are now 30, who were 23 maybe 7 years ago, where it's like, okay, maybe we're not watching it at the same clip, but like I'm still watching sports at the same clip. The NBA is just actually just at a lower clip than it was before.
Aaron's gonna be good. Aaron's up. Shouts to Iceman,
Oh,
as we
shout out to
know him.
Aaron.
He's actually, I think he flew in about an hour ago, so he's up until Saturday. I'm gonna see him Thursday or Friday. He'll be a good litmus test because he's someone who's super busy, who I know keeps up with sports. Like we're texting about the NFL damn near every Sunday, right? So I know he's up on the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure. Like I bet he's on the same schedule as far as the NBA with us. Like catch it when I catch it, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be very interested to see like how much because I've never actually directly asked him. I know Steven for a fact watches a lot less than maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I know Brandon Petty watches less than 2 or 3 years ago. I'm pretty sure Duke watches less than even 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. Nate, I know Nate's up on it. Nate, I'll have to talk to Nate. Nate's up on his NBA too. I'm sure it's less. Dustin would be the other one. Dustin, he's a league pass junkie. So I'll talk to him. I know Dustin keeps up with it because of like fantasy and everything. But yeah, I'd have to ask. I'll have to ask these guys directly if I see all of them this weekend. I'll definitely see Aaron and Andrew, but Aaron will be a good litmus test because I know he keeps up. Off that, I was going to say, I really lock in post Valentine's Day, post All-Star weekend to the NBA, right? I've said that before. Problem with that is, Keenan, 90 days after that's a postseason. So what am I really locking into? I'm locking into the stretch run. All right. It's not like, it's not like we got 60 games left, right? At that point, you're really down to 30, 27
25.
games. Yeah.
The last third of the season you're locked into.
They should really put the All-Star game right like in the middle of January. Move it up a little bit to where it's at the halfway point, because there's no point of having it 58, 60 games in. That seems silly.
Yeah, no, you would think the break would be like halfway through. It's kind of like teams that have a bye week in the NFL in week like 14. You're like, I get it. Like sometimes it like works out for you, but like a lot of teams have like the teams that have like halfway through. It's like, oh, we've gotten halfway through. You got to bye, you go halfway through. But yeah, I think easy 66 games. I don't think you need to change how the courts are or anything like that. I mean, I think there's ways you could make it interesting. Like if you try, I know people talk about maybe taking out the corner three or something like that to kind of make the court a little bit different. To kind of,
I've heard that too.
Like there's different ways that people kind of talk about the game. Whatever, fine. But what I would do, make it 66 games, and from there, you have to play obviously at least 80% of your game, at least 80% of your games to be qualify for any awards. So
they either got to cut the games or they got to do our tournament idea. And I will say this, Keenan.
Both.
I got the dual TV set up, so guess what? This is going to be the first time truly, because last year I was in Tennessee on Christmas last year. I did not really watch the NBA games. Like I remember watching the night game. I don't remember
a bit, but it wasn't anything like.
Yeah,
we weren't locked in. Like it used to be routine. We went to Dad's in the morning, Christmas. We went to Mom's afterwards, and we were sitting down and we were watching all 5 games. And in between some of the games, obviously we had Christmas.
Well, it's like this.
In between
like
a little
said,
bit, we
games
were
were
playing 2K.
on. Games were on during the whole gifts, during all that. So like we weren't really paying attention, but they were on enough to where they would hold your attention during the gifts. And then by the time you're really done with all the festivities, it's about 8:00. You got 2 full games that you can really lock into.
Yep.
So you've at least followed, because it's always 5 games. So those first 3, you've at least watched the fourth quarter of those. You've at least seen all the key points. You can at least chop it up about that. And then the last 2 games, yeah, you can watch those in full.
Yep.
I do plan on watching. I do wish the NFL went with a 4:30, 8:30 schedule. Not only today, but I wish they did that on Saturday for these games too. That seems to make more sense. But because last year they did there was 3 Christmas games, right? There was Chiefs, Raiders, Ravens, Niners was the nightcap.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like there was a 3rd game. And maybe it was a Sunday. Maybe it was a Sunday last year. Maybe it was a Sunday or Monday and not a Tuesday. And maybe that's why they had 3.
I don't fully remember. I'm not going to lie to you.
Either way, I'm going to have both on. NFL is going to be on one TV. NBA is going to be on the other. I'm going to lock in for Christmas Day games like I have not in apparently 2 or 3 years. So, listen, Keenan, we talk way more NBA than I was expecting. I'm at my best when I'm complaining. I feel like, at least about the NBA. At least about the NBA.
It seems like over the last year, we have changed our podcasts from being like, oh my God, we love the NBA to like, we just are the old man. Like, this league sucks. Listen, I hate these young kids.
Keen, this is a true story. I can vividly remember this. Mid-January 1999. I'm a 6-year-old. I'm a 6-year-old turning 7. I vividly remember like watching NBA opening night. Like that's the first time I really locked into the NBA, right? Mm-hmm. So like I am a boomer in NBA viewing years. I'm like 45 in NBA viewing years because I've been watching this shit for a full 28 years now. That sounds insane to say. Sorry. Terrible at math. My bad. 26 years. Boom. There you go. That's how you know it's late. Just messed up easy math. Either way, I'm at my best when I'm complaining about these leagues. NBA, NFL, players, coaches, otherwise. I am at my best when I'm complaining. That's kind of hypocritical, Keenan, because I just said how the NBA fan base is unbearable because it complains too much. That's because they're more delusional. I'm giving you nuanced, completely thought out hate complaints about the NBA, about the NFL. I'm sure you'll hear in this next part. I'm sure I'll complain about something when it pertains to the NFL. So, I mean, hey, is what it is. I'm also at my best when I'm like giving love to the NBA and NFL, whatever we talk about. But I feel like we've had some great segments on here that have been centered around thought out hate. I don't want to just call it hate, right? Because that just sounds like we're just dishing out shade for no reason.
No, it's critique. It's
Nuanced
genuine
hate.
criticism.
Yeah.
Genuine criticism that needs to be said. Yes, these players need to actually play. If you're not going to care, I'm not going to care. When I watch, again, I'm going to compare you to the WNBA because they're a very much growing league that I find a lot of enjoyment in. Why do I find enjoyment in? I could turn on any Asia Wilson game. I don't care if they're playing the Washington Mystics, who were not great this year, or if they're playing the New York Liberty, who won it all. I'm going to get the same Asia Wilson, someone who cares. And that's all I really want. I just want to watch 40 to 48 minutes worth of basketball for players that care. That's it. Don't ask for much. You care, you play well, I'm going to watch and enjoy it. That's it.
I know. Listen, I know we talked about the WNBA in the summer, and I know we're supposed to be signing off that, transitioning to the NFL. But Keenan, you just kind of reminded me of something. There's a lot of WNBA and NBA ads, just commercials that are unbearable. Or like I'll watch them, especially like the State Farm WNBA ones. I think there's one with Sue Bird where she's like, Asia, was it fine when you won your second MVP or some shit like that?
Yeah, when it's like her, Sue Bird, Asia Wilson, and Kelsey Plum maybe in the car or someone else randomly.
And I know like that was played out through the summer when the WNBA was at its peak. But my point is there's a lot of NBA ads that are like that too, where I'm sitting there like I'll just be by myself watching these and out loud I'll be like, who the fuck was that for? Like, who was that commercial for? Why? Who actually thought like, yep, we need that commercial that's going to come across as cool, funny. Like, I don't want to be the guy again who says like, oh, things were better in the past. But I mean, if it's not, that's
funny.
That's a good one. That's a good
funny.
commercial.
No. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's funny. Like that.
Well, that's because Andy Reid is like Andy Reid. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago with you and Tim. Andy Reid's like, that's like his game 7. He's taking that like it's his second Super Bowl right there. Like he's going.
It's funny.
These ads.
But it's for someone, and that's the reason why I brought that one up is because it's the same.
I don't know if those
it's the same thing.
I don't know if those
same company.
I don't know if those ads would be as good though if Andy Reid wasn't going for a home run, going for a Game 7 Super Bowl.
Fair enough.
If he doesn't do that, like we got to put that in Andy Reid's Hall of Fame resume. Honestly, like I don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't know why he wasn't doing these ads before, but hey, is what it is. Yeah, I can't wait to find more stuff to complain about. I'm sure I will have plenty between these 7. We get 7 games worth of content for me to complain about. So I will surely find something. I'm sure there will be Christmas commercials that were just made for specifically Wednesday. By the way, will Netflix even have commercials? How's that going to work? They're just going to have shitty ads in between.
No idea.
That'll be like shitty YouTube ads in between is what that's going to be. So maybe those will actually be good, but I'm sure there'll be plenty for me to complain about when it comes to the NBA because I'm sure one of these games, trying to be positive, I just said how I want to be less condescending. I'm going to bring it down here. I hope, I'll say that, okay, I'll be hopeful instead of condescending. I hope there's not a situation in one of these 5 basketball games where it's probably going to be close games because it's a good matchup, right? I would hope nothing happens to where, like in the last 90 seconds, I would hope nothing happens to where there's a close call and then we got to go to the monitor for 5 minutes of real time. And then that's 5 minutes away from a beautiful basketball game with superstars, some of the best basketball players in the entire world. Hope we do not get taken away to figure out like who tipped the ball out of bounds last, or is it a flagrant 1, or is it a flagrant 2? Hope none of that happens, right? Hope none of that happens. That's all I'm saying. I hope that didn't sound condescending. I hope that sounded as pure and nice and hopeful as I intended it to sound.
It didn't, but you know what? The intention was there. That's all that matters.
The intention was there. It's the thought that counts. That's what they say when you give a shitty Christmas gift. It's the thought that counts. Fuck out of here with that. is not the thought
All
that
right.
counts.
Well, what we were here to
Be a
do.
good ass gift. Don't give me some bullshit gift. Sorry.
Yeah, no, sometimes it's like being good actually matters. Like, oh man, it's the thought that you went out there and you played your best. No, you sucked, but you played. No, you actually sometimes you got to be good or you've got to do something well for you to get credit for it. But we were doing behind the curtain. We were going to sign off, and sign off went a little longer than I thought it was going to. But we were talking way more basketball. We were talking more basketball than we expected, and we were going to obviously transition into talking more football. So if you're watching this, it's because you're watching the basketball portion. You're going to be watching the football portion coming up here, Warner Brothas Podcast, with my brother Kyle, of course. When we get to talking, it just kind of gets to rambling on. We hadn't talked in a minute, and we hadn't talked basketball in a while, so these thoughts are still there. I promise you we could ramble for 2.5 to 3 more hours of just random stuff. Promise you. But Warner Brothas Podcast, Kyle Keenan, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all Warner Brothas Podcast. Look out for the NFL portion of this where we are going to talk about some picks, a little bit about how the NFL season's been going or went last week, but a lot of picks for this upcoming Christmas Day and everything scheduled. But check that out, Warner Brothas Podcast.